It's time for the Las Vegas Sportsline, brought to you by the Sunset Station with sports director Chuck Esposito. Presented by WagerTalk.com.
Hey, welcome to the Las Vegas Sportsline, coming to you live from inside beautiful Sunset Station here at Club Madrid. Chuck Esposito's here, Marco D'Angelo from Wager Talk. I'm Dave Koken, and we're glad to have you with us on this holiday. If you're enjoying a day off, that's awesome. And if you're at work like us and you love your job, that's awesome too. Lots to go through today, and we always started off on Mondays with our Monday afternoon quarterback. But before we get to the individual games, Chuck, a lot more smiling faces on the other side of the counter this weekend than last.
I was going to say a little bit easier to come to work this Monday. It was a great weekend last weekend for the bettors. They did really well, especially on Sunday. I think with the Patriots going down, especially as far as they were probably one of the highest ticket counts, if not the highest ticket count I've seen so far season to date.
Wow.
With the loss, I mean, it was money line, it was parlays, it was teasers. Anytime you have the Browns win, it's always a good thing for us. The Redskins win was a good thing yesterday. And although the bettors did well in the afternoon, I think the 3 afternoon games, you had the 2 double-digit favorites. They did good on both the Chargers and Packers. They actually were on the Seahawks against the Rams yesterday straight, so they did well there. The night game helped tremendously, too. A lot of Eagle money with the Cowboys winning the game outright. It knocked almost everything live down. So overall, it was a much better weekend for us than it was last Sunday. But it's football, guys, and we're here to talk about another week and this past weekend's games.
And Marco, from a handicapping standpoint, when you see a week like there was last week where the public won everything, does that alter your approach going into the next week?
Well, I'm obviously going to look at dogs the next week because you know that the books are going to have to make some kind of adjustment and hedge towards, inflating the lines on the favorites to try to slow it down. But just to go back to the New England game for a second, that's a classic Joes versus pros scenario because as much as the ticket count was with the Joes, I know of almost every pro that I talked to in town was taking Tennessee in that game, and it shows you how much the public can outweigh.
It was dwarfed by the Joes yesterday. No question about it. I
would say so, and I think this game probably ended up being a real good game for the house as well, even though it was 2 nondescript teams as we start our Monday afternoon quarterback with the game rundowns. The Bills and Jets, Matt Barkley was not inspiring any confidence as far as the bettors are concerned. They figured, well, he's just another version of Nathan Peterman, and this is one the Jets are probably going to win. It turned out to be all Buffalo.
It wasn't a heavily bet game, and for whatever reason, they didn't go against Buffalo when it was Barkley. And then you had the Jet quarterback change as well, McCown, which I thought they'd be much better with McCown, actually. They had no Robbie Anderson. They had some other injuries. I thought they'd perform a little bit better, but McCown hasn't played all season. It's been Darnold. But I would go back to Barkley. When he was a backup for the Bears 3 years ago, that second half of the season, I think he started the last 6 or 8 games. He was productive as far as moving the team up and down the field. He put some big yardage games on the board. He had a lot of touchdown passes. Granted, he had some turnovers, but I was kind of surprised that he was actually out of football. I think from a backup perspective, he's a very serviceable backup. McCoy had a rushing touchdown yesterday. This Bills team is definitely a Jekyll and Hyde team. Their only 2 wins previously had come with Josh Allen at quarterback. But this Jets team is just in bad shape, guys, on both sides of the ball.
And you wonder about Todd Bowles at this point because they just weren't ready to play yesterday.
No, absolutely not. When the score was 17-0, I tweeted out yesterday, the Buffalo Bills had more points, 17, than the Jets had yards at that point. Wow. They only had 9 yards at that point. And for Barkley to come in and not know the system, basically walk off the street, and I thought, like you guys, that I thought McCown would have been an upgrade over Darnold just because, being a pro, a veteran and knowing the system, just that sealed the fate for me, I think, of Bowles.
The number to me, regardless of who the quarterback situation was with those 2 teams, it seemed big to me at a touchdown or higher. I mean, the Jets are no bargain, and to make them over a touchdown favorite against anybody, I think is a stretch. They don't score a whole lot of points. I think it was one of those games where Buffalo kind of, rallied the troops, and Barkley came in, was able to move the team a little bit. They got some running game from McCoy. I thought it was a good game for them.
The Atlanta Falcons came out of Washington feeling good about themselves, maybe back in the playoff chase with a good win against the Redskins, and one in which they probably played their best 60 minutes of the season. They followed it up by playing their worst 60 minutes of the season They got bombed by the Cleveland Browns yesterday. They made the Browns look like a juggernaut.
Well, I think, we talked about it. This was going to be back-to-back road games for Atlanta. They are no bargain outside. Mm-hmm. They've given up a lot of yards rushing. I thought it was a good fit for Baker Mayfield and Landry and Nick Chubb to play well. I mean, Chubb had that 95-yard or 92-yard run for Chubb. You think about Jim Brown and some of the other great Browns running backs they have. That was the longest touchdown run from scrimmage in Cleveland Brown history. So kind of a cool thing to watch a young back. And you think about upper management that made Hugh Jackson make that move to trade Carlos Hyde to get Nick Chubb in there. How did Hugh Jackson not see that? I mean, this kid clearly, with the limited time he had prior to the trade of Carlos Hyde, he was the more dynamic back. He was the game-breaking back. And I thought being able to run the ball against Atlanta, and Baker Mayfield played good, not turnovers. He had a couple of touchdown passes, maybe his best game in about a month. But they just played a good game, and Atlanta had their chances, though, guys. They were inside the 10 on 3 different occasions. Only once came away with points.
And stopped on a fourth down at the
and
1.
I question the play calling.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just very suspect, the play calling that they chose to go with there. That team outside is just a different team. They're in a really tough spot right now, I think, with the 5 losses, looking up at both Carolina and New Orleans. They play a Dallas team this week that came off a huge win against Philadelphia. It's an Atlanta team, guys, that's trending the wrong way.
And, Dave, we said it when we talked about it in the podcast, that Cleveland had to have more continuity this week. The second week it was just turmoil the week before when you lose the coach and the offensive coordinator, how you prepare that week. We saw it yesterday. They had a better game plan.
And I think I touched on it last week. To have a good week on our side of the counter, it starts with the Browns covering, and when they win, it's just yay, sportsbook. So it definitely helps from our side, guys.
Win
no
big.
Question about it.
They blew up all the teasers as well. So did the Saints, as far as anybody who might have been against them here. Situational spot favored the Bengals. My only play yesterday was the New Orleans Saints. I went with my numbers. I thought the number was short in this game. My line on the game was 7.5. So I got this one right. In a big way. The Saints are the best team in the league right now, Chuck.
Everybody else got it right, too. It was strange, but we put the game up at 4.5, and the first bets that came across were on the Bengals. The game did go down before it ended up going back up, but it was a game that we definitely were Bengal fans yesterday. I'm not so sure, had the Saints kept their foot on the gas, that they couldn't have put 70 points up. They looked so impressive. I mean, you look at the fact that no team can defend Michael Thomas. Now that you've got Mark Ingram in the mix, you've got that offensive line playing so well. The defense is starting to create turnovers. I agree with you right now. They've got a tough schedule.
Oh, sure.
Tougher schedule than the Rams do in the NFC for the rest of the way. They hold that tiebreaker, which is really important. But they had Breeze out, and all Kamara and Thomas and Ingram out by the fourth quarter. They easily could have put 70 up yesterday, guys.
And the flip side of it, on the Bengals, offensively, you take A.J. Green out, and I will tell you that there are about a dozen players in the league that I award 1 point on their own in power ratings. A.J. Green is one of them because it changes the entire configuration of the opposing defense. They don't have to worry about doubling A.J. Green and only having 9 guys to defend the rest of the field. They can go single coverage. The Saints did that yesterday, and it was just an easy victory for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was one of those guys on the Bengals because the spot was horrible for the Saints, and you got to give a team credit. Whenever a team is in a horrible spot like that and they still come to play, to me, they are the favorite. I know you got that ticket on the Rams, but right now,
no, the Saints, and with Cooper Kupp going down, the Saints are now the favorite in the NFC.
That is a big loss, guys. I know we'll touch
is.
on the Rams, but I think when you look at the Rams moving forward, and I think they've been a little exposed for 3 straight weeks. They could have lost that game to Green Bay. They gave up a lot of yards and a lot of points to the Saints before making that a game. And then Seattle had the last possession yesterday and could have won that game.
They could have.
But you look at Cooper Kupp, people don't realize he led that team in receiving yards last year. And he missed some time as well with injury last year. He is that underneath safety valve crutch for Jared Goff.
Well, he makes
Woods and Cook so much better.
Yes.
But he has the speed to stretch the defense. He's had some big play touchdowns. He's the underneath guy. He's a great blocker. He reminds me of kind of like a young Jordy, the relationship that Rodgers had with Jordy Nelson. I think that is a big loss for the Rams moving forward.
We saw a strange game in Tampa yesterday. The Bucs, about 500 yards of total offense. in 3 points. A lot to talk about in this game. One, Josh Norman's comments after the game from the Redskins saying, hey, I'd rather play all the games on the road. Well, we go on the road, we don't get booed by our home fans who just boo us all the time and don't support us. Maybe he's got something there. The flip side of it, let's talk about Tampa, because no sign of Jameis Winston. It really looks at this point, from a logical standpoint, that they have pulled the plug on Winston and that they're going to be looking for a quarterback in the draft.
Well, I think the interesting piece will be, and Dirk Cutter's already announced that it's going to be Fitzmagic again this week against the Giants. They're on the road, a small underdog. I think no seat is probably hotter than Dirk Cutter's right now. So
I think he's in contention for the USC job.
That's fine to say about Winston, but I think a lot will depend on who the coach is. If they do make a coaching change, they still have to make a decision I think it's sometime in March about picking up that extra year. So I think a lot's dependent on who that coach is. And you look at Washington, if they do make a coaching change, I think you look at Washington, and they are literally the ugliest 6-3 team. I mean, people don't even realize they're still in first place. They're not even the favorite in most sports books in their own division. I mean, to win the Super Bowl, you look at Philadelphia, their odds are lower. Some places have Dallas lower. They're not even a 500 team. Both teams are 4-5 and have lower odds than the Washington Redskins do. But I think you look at the Redskins, who do have the easiest remaining schedule in the league left. They've got just so many injuries on the offensive line. Their wide receivers are beat up. Alex Smith hasn't produced the way we thought he would there in Gruden's offense, but they're still winning.
They're 6-3.
And they've got a relatively easy schedule. No team has defended the NFC East in a decade, so that doesn't bode well for the Eagles, although I thought it would be the Giants. It shows you how wrong I am. They only have one win right now, and they're vying for the number one pick in the draft. But it's a Redskin team that isn't getting a lot of respect from the bettors or I think from the odds makers.
No, they're not,
because
and I tweeted this to be funny, but it's not. It kind of is. I tweeted that despite being 6-3, the Redskins' power rating still remains somewhere between LOL and GTFOH. They're just not that good.
In Tampa Bay was the wise guy play yesterday.
It was. It was a good game for us. That the public. I think both the Joes and pros were on Tampa Bay yesterday.
Well, and the thing of it is, Marco, the inefficiency level was staggering. I mean, you get 500 yards of offense and 3 points. It's unheard of.
4 turnovers are going to do that. And the thing about every one of the turnovers, they were deep in Washington territory. They were ready to score every time they turned the football over. In Washington, that's how they survived. But that is, the injuries, we always look at injuries. But
they will catch up with the Redskins. And I think that's the fear, and that's why you're seeing Philadelphia and Dallas have lower odds in the division and to win it all. They made a kicking change too, Tampa Bay. Let Cannizzaro go. And I saw a great quote from a beat writer in Tampa who said it looks like Cutter is just rearranging the seats on the Titanic. And I read it. I was at Red Rock. Jason McCormick and I were laughing about it. It was a great quote. But I mean, you think about that. He made a kicking change. I mean, but that's what they did.
Was the band still playing while he was changing the seats?
Boy.
If it was, it was very low.
The Patriots and Titans, it was a flat spot for the Patriots. I loved some of the comments after the game. And, going in, it was a dead spot for the Patriots. And the Titans are starting to play well. There also was a little extra motivation for 2 guys on the Titans yesterday. Malcolm Butler, who despite being a former Patriots hero, didn't play it down in the Super Bowl last year. And Dion Lewis, who despite about 1,100 yards in offense for the Patriots last year, they weren't interested in bringing him back. And both players were seriously motivated yesterday. That added to the intensity for the Titans, who, by the way, are quietly starting to look like a pretty good football team.
I think, how about from the Titans coaching side of it, too? Mike Vrabel, who, is from the Belichick tree, a lot of his coaches haven't done well at the next level when they've actually got that job. And we scratched our head earlier with some of the play calling of Vrabel early in the season. They do seem to have righted the ship somewhat. They have back-to-back wins. They win at Dallas, which now looks like a really good win because Dallas went into Philadelphia and won. They beat the Patriots.
Should have beaten the Chargers.
Right, should have beaten the Chargers. They beat the Patriots. And you're right, Tennessee's playing really well. I mean, you think about where Tennessee is in that division and the way the Colts are playing right now and Houston. I mean, it's become a much better division.
Yes.
I expected the Texans, as we talked about, maybe to be that team that went from worst to first. Because of, the Deshaun Watson and J.J. Watt injuries last year, I didn't expect the Jaguars to go from first to worst. But, I mean, the Jags have fallen apart, and it's opened it up for the other teams Tennessee and Indianapolis